Good evening. Welcome to the February 10th, 2021 recess meeting of the Arlington County Planning Commission. I'm Jim Lantelmi, Chair of the Commission. The Commission advises the County Board on matters pertaining to planning and development in the community. This is the second of two evenings scheduled for our public hearings. Tonight, we will be hearing proposals to authorize the placement of non-commercial banners on streetlight poles in the public right-of-way located in the boundaries of the Ballston Business Improvement District, an information item on updates to the Community Energy Plan, a proposal to designate an Arlington Historic District overlay for the Mount Salvation Baptist Cemetery, and some administrative matters. Some items that I'm required to share with you now. For the safety of our staff and residents, we are holding this meeting virtually, as we have been since our July 2020 hearings. Welcome to our commissioners, county staff, applicants, and community members who are all joining us remotely. We are legally authorized to hold this virtual meeting based on the governor's executive orders, legislation adopted by the Virginia General Assembly, and the County Board's Continuity of Operations Ordinance adopted in March 2020. Before we begin, I have a few specifics to orient everyone to this virtual environment. Tonight's meeting is available as a broadcast with closed captioning on Comcast Xfinity channels 25 and 1085, Verizon Fios channels 39 and 40, and the county's website. Audio of tonight's meeting is available via phone. If commissioners, presenters, or speakers lose internet connectivity during tonight's meeting, please reconnect to us by phone. You can use the number provided on the Teams invite, which is 347-973-6905, with a conference ID of 678-389-256#. And registered speakers have received Ms. Johnson's telephone number in their speaker registration confirmation. For other presenters and speakers joining us through Microsoft Teams, please keep your phones and devices muted until you're called upon. Please turn off sound to any other devices around you to minimize interference. When you're called upon to speak, you must unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that is located on your meeting's command bar. The moderator does not have the ability to unmute you. Only you can do that. If you're dialing in by phone, press *6 to unmute. Commissioners, if you wish to be recognized to speak, as always, please use your hand raise function or turn on your video, unmute your microphone to signal your interest, and I'll call upon you in order. For public speakers, you will be called upon by the clerk at an assigned time. Pre-registration to speak at today's hearing was required. We're not able to accommodate additional speakers. Public comment will take place within the same time frames as we would provide at an in-person meeting. Speakers will have 3 minutes to comment as individuals and 5 minutes to speak if representing an organization. A speaker timer will be displayed on screen by the clerk. If you are dialing in by phone and unable to see the screen, we will provide an audible warning when 30 seconds are remaining. You will be muted when your time has concluded. The meeting chat is active for presenters or commissioners who need technical assistance only. Do not use the meeting chat for discussion, public comment, questions about agenda items, or any requests for more information. All public comment must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public testimony period. Finally, this is a public forum. Tonight's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county's website. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act requirements. Madam Clerk, please call the first item.
All right. Good evening. We will begin our meeting with item an ordinance on the county board's own motion to authorize the placement of non-commercial banners in the boundaries of the Ballston Business Improvement Service District. Tonight's presentation will be brought to you by Kate Payne from AED.
Welcome, Ms. Payne. The screen is yours.
All right. Good evening, commissioners. Again, my name is Kate Payne, and I am with AED, and I am the county liaison to the bids. I'll turn it over to Tina to introduce herself.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for having us tonight. We appreciate your time and attention to this matter. Thank you.
All right. So this may look familiar from last month's meeting, but this is an ordinance on the county board's own motion to authorize the placement of non-commercial banners on streetlight poles in the public right-of-way located in the boundaries of the Ballston Business Improvement District. And this is as authorized by the Arlington County zoning ordinance. Again, this ordinance has allowed for banners throughout Arlington County in various locations. First, starting with the Crystal City back in the early 2000s, which is now the National Landing Bid. Roslyn also has a banner system which helps create a distinct area, identifying that district as the Roslyn Bid. And most recently, the Columbia Pike in 2018, a banner ordinance was approved for the Pike, identifying this as the Pike as Arlington's a main street in Arlington. So the proposal that the Ballston Bid has put together for you tonight, similar to these banners in nature, and is following the process outlined in the sign ordinance. So I'll turn it over to Tina to talk about the branding, the installation, and maintenance of the banner system.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Kate, for all the work you've done to help us get here. Appreciate it. So we're just like the other bids, as you've seen. We would like to, fully identify our district, celebrate the district, and certainly display our branding and our identity throughout our district. We recently underwent a rebranding for Ballston. This is the second time we've won awards for our branding, so we're very proud of it. But it really does encompass the entire community. So we really wanted to bring that mantra to the streets and to include all of our people in Ballston, and it's just a way for us to welcome people to the district and let people know that here in Ballston, we care. You're part of our community, and you're here with us. So, the next slide, please, Kate. Thank you. Thank you. So I think you're familiar with the company that's producing the banners for us. Downtown Decorations, very well known. We actually were referred to them from one of the other bids. Again, they work with Mark Perry Productions, so very reliable group of people to go ahead and produce and maintain the banners for us. Next slide, please. Thank you. We have two styles that we are putting up for approval today. The first that you see to the left is our campaign style banner. So to more introduce the brand, and again, this is more of a short-term campaign type style banner that will be up for a shorter period of time, and we likely will be back to you or back to Kate with maybe some other styles in the future when we want to run certain campaigns around whatever idea or program, event, whatever we may want to do in the future. The standard style to the right, this will be the banner that will be the normal, out there when we're not doing a campaign. This is the type of banner that will be there, just symbolizing the overall brand and much not specific to anything in particular that we're trying to relay to the public. And next slide, please. Thank you. The material is very high quality. Again, I think very similar, if not the same, as what the other districts have been using. It's going to be very high rated for outdoor use. Fade resistant, etc. So there's it's the highest quality that you can get for this type of banner, I believe. And I don't know that we'll be reusing the campaign style banners, but we will, of course, be maintaining those that are the standard for us. So, and of course, we'll be maintaining them in the fact that if they are not looking up to par, they start to get dirty or ripped or etc., we'll be replacing those banners immediately to maintain the high quality that we're looking for. And next slide. And the bracket hardware, again, I'm not a technical person, but from what we've been advised, this is the correct and high quality bracket to be used on the poles. We did do, of course, the structural study of the poles as required to make sure that the hardware that we are using is okay to use on those poles as we've delineated. So this is the bracket that we will be using. And next slide, please. Thank you. We have 93 potential banner sites that we proposed. There are a lot more poles than that. We wanted to separate our banners in a certain pattern or a certain cadence along each of the routes that kind of outline the bid in particular. So that would be Quincy Street, Glebe Road, and Fairfax Drive. We already have our circular banners there on the VDOT poles. So we will be then interspersing them throughout the rest of the streets in the district. So we certainly didn't want to overwhelm the community with banners. So we've chosen, to do a certain cadence to them. So they certainly, you're still in the district. You still have some color and some vibrancy, but you're not being overwhelmed with a lot of signage. Next slide, please. Thank you. And of course, our bid board has approved the look and the feel and the actual banners that we have here, and these are certainly funded. They've been funded. They were funded in fiscal year 20, but again here in fiscal year 21. So we certainly appreciate your help again, Kate. Thank you. I think that's our last, yes.
All right, and just some additional information as stated in the sign ordinance, that the banners, again, fully maintained by the Ballston bid, will not totally adversely affect traffic safety to a significant degree. There was some discussion around this at our last meeting, and of course, any signage does create, a visual distraction, but the regulations that are put in place, such as the distance between the banner and the bottom of the street poles, help minimize the traffic impact, as well as the type of material that it's, they're not overly reflective into, drivers' vision. And of course, these are non-commercial in nature in accordance with the zoning ordinance. The copy of the banner may change, but it will always remain non-commercial in nature. And of course, these banners will be in place continuously, and any banner or all banners may be removed at any time if the county manager shall request that. And we're going to open it up to questions. Otherwise, this item is on the consent agenda for adoption by the county board at the February 20th Arlington County Board meeting. So with that, that concludes our presentation, and we will open it up to questions.
Thank you, Ms. Payne. Before we get to that, Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments?
We do not have any public comments tonight.
And do we have any commissions who wish to address this? Not hearing any. The item is now with the commission. So if any commissioners have any questions, now's the time to raise them. Yes, Commissioner Peterson.
Thank you so much for your presentation. We just heard recently from one of the other bids who are also proposing to have banners. I know that the funding for the bids comes from the county, even though you are all separate and independent from the county. Have you talked to the bids about maybe achieving some economies of scale when purchasing banners to just make sure tax dollars are going as far as they can go? For example, Restaurant Week just wrapped up, and so maybe you could coordinate with them to get banners for Restaurant Week. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think for the initial launch of these banners, timing was not on our side for this round. However, that is a great idea with Ballston, Roslyn, and National Landing, as well as the Columbia Pike, all having approved banner systems. Coordinated efforts could, be a big a possibility, and that's something we'll keep in mind for the future.
Okay, great, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you have any other comments, questions from the commission? Hearing none. Commissioner Schroll, do you have any motions you'd like to raise?
I do, Mr. Chairman. I think I have just shared the motion. Hopefully people can see that. Please let me know if you can't.
Great, it's up there. Okay.
All right. Then I would move that the Planning Commission recommends that the County Board adopt on the County Board's own motion the ordinance attached to the report dated January 26th, 2021 to authorize the placement of non-commercial banners on street light poles in the public right-of-way located in the boundaries of the Ballston bid.
Second.
Second, that was Commissioner Steinberger?
Gearin.
Gearin, okay, thank you, Mr. Gearin.
Whoever.
As long as it's seconded.
Splits are seconded, but Commissioner Gearin beat me to it.
Thank you. Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, let's go to a vote. Commissioner Weir.
Aye.
Commissioner Siegel.
Aye.
Commissioner Schroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes.
Aye.
Commissioner Gearin.
Aye.
Commissioner Morton.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel will be late. Commissioner Steinberger.
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Sarli.
Aye.
And I will vote aye also. It passes unanimously, but for an absence. Great. Thank you very much. This is, I guess, maybe the last of the bids that's coming forward for banners. It's nice to hear all of these and to have them moving through for all of the BIDs in the county.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you. Commissioner, Madam Clerk, can you call the second item?
Item number 3 will be a draft on the Community Energy Plan Implementation Framework, known as CEPIF. This is an informational item only. We have Richard Dooley, our DES staff, to present this item this evening.
Welcome, Mr. Dooley. The screen is yours.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to all planning commissioners, appreciate the time for tonight. I just want to verify that you can see up on screen the presentation.
Yes, I can see it.
Wonderful. I love it when technology works. All right. So I, once again, Rich Dooley with the Rethink Energy team, represent the team on this endeavor, and I'm the county's community energy coordinator. Just a little bit of background on the topic tonight, the Community Energy Plan Implementation Framework. This document is a companion document to the Community Energy Plan. The Community Energy Plan in and of itself is part of the county's comprehensive plan. It was first adopted back in 2013. And it was updated, and the update adopted by the county board in September of 2019. Since then, we have been updating the implementation framework so that it is in accordance with the September 29 CEP, or Community Energy Plan. So this presentation tonight will just give you a flavor of what is in the implementation framework. And then also I will send to Ms. Johnson, to your clerk, a link so that you can go ahead and comment on our Conveo webpage if you so desire regarding the various elements of the implementation framework. It's of the order of about 100 pages long, and our comment period will be ending next Monday on the 15th. So for those of you who are not wholly familiar with the Community Energy Plan in and of itself, here are some of the highlights of the big ticket changes that happened in September of 2019 when we compare that to what happened back in the original 2013 version. For renewable electricity, the county board set forth some different milestones and rather ambitious targets for both the government operations as well as for the community. You see there on screen by 2022, the goal was to have 50% of the county government operations to be renewable electricity for the county's electricity use, and then to ramp that up to 100% of the electricity use by county government operations should be used using renewable electricity resources. I'm happy to say that we are close to 80% of the way toward the 100% goal. So we've already surpassed our 50% goal through the use of a virtual power purchase agreement, or VPPA, and that was done just about a year ago. And so we'll continue on our trek to try and reach and actually surpass that 100% goal by the year 2025. And there you see the community by 2035. The goal is to have all of our electricity that we use here in Arlington to be from 100% renewable electricity resources. For electric vehicles, we're in the effort right now to do master planning, not only for county government fleet, but also for the entire community, how to expand the use of electric vehicles, as well as the electric vehicle charging infrastructure, also known as EVSE, and producing that plan by next year, or during the 2022 calendar year. And then last but not least, we also have equity issues. If you recall, the original Community Energy Plan said that we were to implement the Community Energy Plan policies and reach our goals while simultaneously looking at three primary lenses, one being economic competitiveness, two, environmental commitment, and three, in no particular order, energy security. The county board in September 2019 added a fourth lens to say that we needed to incorporate equity issues and energy equity into the work that we do as we develop programs and as we implement the Community Energy Plan activities. And so that is our charge, and we fully accept that, and we are working toward that end. One last thing, a rather ambitious goal for 2050 was set. Back in 2013, the goal was to drop down our greenhouse gas emissions down to 3 metric tons of CO2 equivalent by the year 2050. In September of 2019, and that is the goal, to go ahead and do that. And it looks like I might be disconnected.
You're back in. We can hear you.
Sorry about that. Seem to have some technical difficulties. I think I was bounced out.
Right, you're back in. We can hear you now.
Okay. Let's see if I can go ahead and bring up the presentation for you, and we will get back on track. Can people see my screen or not?
We can see the screen. Yes, the Community Energy Plan Implementation Framework slide is up.
Okay. I unfortunately am having, let's see if I can just advance it. Hopefully things are advancing accordingly for you.
Yes, they are.
CEP adopted policies. Okay. So I'm not sure where I left off with you, but equity and the overarching 2050 goal, again, is carbon neutrality. The next couple of slides, we're going to highlight the adopted policies. And I'm not going to read through them. You'll have this PowerPoint deck available to you, so you can go through that or go to the Community Energy Plan up on our Community Energy Plan webpage if you so desire. But the key issue is that we have 6 different goal areas, be it buildings, resilience, renewable energy are the first 3, and then transportation, county government activities, and education and behavior change are the other 3. Underneath all those goal areas, we have particular policies. And once again, the implementation framework we're talking about tonight relates back to implementing those policies to help us reach our overall goals. So now it gets to the strategies in each of the CEP goal areas. And so for the strategies, again, we have a whole host of strategies. Each of them are parked in different goal areas. We have a total of 63 strategies currently that we have in the draft, and we have received a lot of comments up until this time. Our comment period will be of the order of around 2 months long, because we started the comment period back in mid-December. And we're going to be ending it here on February 15th on Monday. So through that time period and through a myriad community discussions, we now have over 200 comments to sift through on the various strategies. But listed here are just a sampling of a few of the strategies in each of the different goal areas, be it buildings, resilience, and again, renewable energy, and then transportation, the county government activities, and education and behavior change. We used a template to fill out and provide some information for each of those 63 strategies to let people know whether this is an ongoing activity or something that has yet to be, as well as basic ideas as to how the strategy relates to the CEP goal area, as well as the particular policy that it relates to. So our process for creating this new implementation framework related to the September 2019 CEP is such that when we went to the board in September 2019, at that point in time, we had a list of over 120 strategies that we had collected from the public through the update of the Community Energy Plan back in 2018 and 2019. Some of the comments that the public made actually pertain more to the implementation framework than they did to the CEP. So we gathered those, we set those aside, and once it was time to revisit the implementation framework, we wove those ideas into the strategies, ended up with that list of about 100. Told the board in September 2019 we would go forth after September 2019 and into 2020, providing more information for each of those strategies. At the same time, we consolidated the strategies down to now 63, and that process was simply eliminating duplication and recognizing there was some overlap with some of those 120 plus strategies. So we brought it down to 63. We went ahead and we ranked or prioritized the strategies based on the criteria that you see on screen there. And then we put that all together into the draft, and then we released it to county staff, to a variety of different departments to get their take and their comments on the document. And then in December, once again, we went to the public with what you see now on the Conveyo page for the draft implementation framework. We provide a number of different forums and recordings to let people know about the implementation framework. And we've held a number of different meetings dating all the way back to January, even December, on into this month with a variety of community groups as well as commissions, and you see them listed there. What we plan on doing is once the comment period wraps up on February 15th, we will incorporate those comments, understand what we need to do in order to make the implementation framework more understandable, and help people better understand how it connects with the community energy plan. And we'll make those changes, bring it forward to the county manager's office, and then eventually it will go to the county board later on this year. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and make myself available for any questions that you may have. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dooley. Yes, it is now before the commission. Because this is an information item, we will not be taking public comments. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Mr. Dooley? It's the time. Commissioner Schroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Dooley, for your presentation and also your work on this project over the years. Question for you about the staff effort to expand access to electric vehicles. In the document on the website where you're seeking public comment, notes that staff will be developing a blueprint for transition to EVs with the goal of trying to have that transition be achieved by 2040 or earlier, if possible. Could you speak to why staff is recommending the 2040 goal, knowing that the CEP indicates that over 30% of the CO2 reduction is supposed to be achieved through sustainable transportation?
It's a great question. I appreciate that. Thank you. The best way to answer it, I would say, is we had, before we developed the community energy plan, we had an energy model that we put together, working together with a consultant. They looked at our current energy load and working together with a consultant that knew the energy sector very well and knows the energy sector very well. They went ahead and forecasted, if you will, how the county could get to the goals that we had set forth. And there is what's called a wedge graph in our community energy plan that you're referring to that talks about 31% of the reduction between now and the promised goal of carbon neutrality by 2050. 31% of those reductions would come from sustainable transportation. It will be a process for us to go from where we are now to have the roads teeming with nothing but electric vehicles and to have the charging infrastructure in place to support those additional electric vehicles. So the plan and the blueprint is such that, and it is yet to be developed, it is a work in progress. But the 2040 timeframe is both to allow for that transition to take place, both in the infrastructure as well as recognizing that all the cars out there will not fully transition over to EVs, overnight. And also from a price parity standpoint, we recognize that price parity, if you will, from EVs compared to internal combustion engine vehicles has yet to happen. We hope that it will be happening here in the next few years. So the best I could say is that likely that 24 marker there is a reflection of how we incorporated it into the energy model, and recognizing that, again, we have to look out all the way out to the year 2050 before we reach that carbon neutrality goal. And last but not least, EVs and expanded electric vehicle charging infrastructure is but one piece of the overall transportation and sustainable transportation wedge. I would say also supporting the master transportation plan and fully acknowledging and embracing multimodal transportation ethos is a big part of this as well, and working together with our transportation department led by Dennis Leach and his team is a very important part of this overall effort.
Mr. Dooley, thanks for that explanation. A couple of things that I might offer, I guess, as way of feedback. So yeah, the cost parity piece, it's certainly true that we're not at cost parity for EVs with ICE vehicles. That's certainly true. Although it's expected that we're going to reach cost parity within the next decade, or ideally the next 5 to 6 years, but maybe more realistically within the next 10. The other piece is I would expect that the kind of daily VMT for our existing fleet is such that for the most part, most of the vehicles could be transitioned to EVs, given the range of current electric vehicles on the market today that are in excess of 200 miles on a battery charge. I could understand that maybe our first responders, our police vehicles might want to not transition to EVs just yet, and maybe there's a delay there. But I would really encourage staff to be looking at what our kind of daily VMT is with our existing fleet and trying to prioritize which vehicles could be transitioned in that scoping document that you're putting together. And I would really encourage staff to be kind of working at moving up that timeline. I do worry that if we are really delaying until 2040, then if a third of our achieved benefit is sort of encompassed in that transition into EVs, then we just don't get there. Certainly appreciate your work, Mr. Dooley, and the other staff, Ms. Kelsch and others who have worked on this project, but would certainly encourage you to be a little bit more ambitious on this.
Thank you very much for the comments, and recognize, just for clarification, we do have a county fleet element to that master plan, and then there's also going to be a community-wide electric vehicle and charging infrastructure element to this as well. I hear you on moving more speedily and at a more ambitious rate on the county side. And I know that Helen on our team is leading that charge and developing that plan, and I will pass along your comments to her. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Dooley.
Thank you, Commissioner Sproul. Commissioner Gearan, you're next.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Dooley, for your presentation and sharing this with us. I had a question about the priorities. This is always an issue when we update one of these plans and we end up with so many priorities. Can you tell us more about how you prioritize them?
I'd be happy to. I could bring up a slide. See if I can try and bring up a slide again in regards to the criteria. Let me see if I can find that readily.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we did use 9 criteria. They were equally weighted. And when we looked at all of the strategies, up on your screen there should be those 9 criteria. Yours is not the first question or comment regarding the prioritization process. And so let me just say that based on the comments heretofore, I think part of our next steps in incorporating comments from the public will be likely to revisit the prioritization process and to rethink that and just to fill you and other commissioners in on other comments we've heard in our public forums and in other meetings. There is quite a few people who are saying that climate change should be the dominant piece to this, given our 2050 goal of carbon neutrality, and that should take precedent over other criteria, or should be weighted more readily than some of the other criteria. So we are going to go ahead and keep that in mind and take that into account and incorporate those comments again as we move forward in revising what you see now up online.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I think it'll be helpful for us to understand, too, how you do prioritize them going forward. For example, easy to implement in 2 years is definitely a laudable goal when we're trying to get some wins under our belt and build momentum. So I guess I just wanted to understand all of that, too, and perhaps we'll get a chance to hear more when you come back with that.
Very good. That's a good point, and we'll take that into account. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Guerin. Commissioner Peterson.
I'd like to thank you as well for a great presentation. I noted that one of our priorities is to establish Arlington as a leader. And I think that is something that we will do when we're executing this, this plan. And when we are leading, sometimes it's hard to learn from the lessons of others who have already laid the path. So we're going to be laying the path for others. I think there are probably some other cities that are well positioned in the country and in the world that will also be leading. And have we reached out to any of those cities so that we can kind of share lessons learned, partner with them, find out where some pitfalls may be, find out what some great low-hanging fruit is, and kind of be working as a team to make sure we're all achieving this together?
It's a great question, and the short answer is yes. We have reached out to and both in terms of phone calls as well as looking at websites for climate action plans, local energy plans around the country and in our region. We have some really wonderful examples in DC, Montgomery County. So relatively close to home, we have some really great examples of how to be a leader and how to continue to lead this charge. So we'd like to think that we've done quite a bit of work in that regard and quite a bit of research. Also, our consultants that we bring in have the opportunity to fall back on a lot of work that they've done with other jurisdictions, and we definitely take full advantage of that. And so we'd like to think that we have the best of all those worlds. But that being said, up on our Conveyo webpage, one of the things that we do stress to people is we don't claim to have all the answers. And so if they know of examples where there's been success stories of one or more strategies, please send us a link, let us know more, tell us where we're missing some information, and we'd be happy to go to those websites or go to those people and find out more. As an example, we know Berkeley has a pilot program for electric vehicle charging along their residential streets. And so, we've reached out to them and talked with the program manager out there, trying to hear the pitfalls, the benefits, and so forth of their program in its nascent stages. And so we will continue to do that, depending on what the topic area is. And last but not least, in terms of leading, we were the first here in the state in doing a virtual power purchase agreement, and that enabled us once again to get a little bit over 80% of the way toward our 100% goal of renewable electricity for county government operations. So John Morrell on our team, he has left the county. He's now with Fairfax, but when he was back here with Arlington County, he led the charge with that, and it was instrumental in making that all happen. So we appreciate being out there on the cutting edge, and we do our best to be on the leading edge, but also learning from others is a great idea from your standpoint. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks so much.
You bet.
Thank you, Commissioner Peterson. Commissioner Crowell, you have additional questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dooley, in your presentation, you noted the CEP goal of trying to install 160 megawatts of on-site solar electricity in the county. Wondering if you, I may have missed this, but if you could kind of point out what implementation action helps us try to achieve that. And that's a lot of solar. That's about, that were on the ground, that would be about 800 acres of solar. Just wondering sort of what implementation actions we're pursuing right now to try to achieve that objective?
Wonderful question, and it is an ambitious goal. I will, in representing the team, I'd say we all recognize the ambitious element and nature to that. A few different things that we are doing currently and have been doing. I mentioned Helen Reineke-Wilt on our team. She is the manager of the Solar Co-op program. So for residential properties or residential homeowners, single-family homeowners primarily, there's been a cycle where we have partnered with Virginia Solar United Neighbors, or SUN, and that group is a nonprofit that has solar co-ops throughout various jurisdictions around Virginia, around the Commonwealth. We've partnered with them at no cost to the county, other than some staff time in assisting them to hold forums and education sessions. But through running the solar co-op here in the county through Virginia Sun, we've enabled of the order of around 40 to 50 homeowners each cycle to go ahead and to get solar put on their homes at, I would say, a price discount of at least 20% in comparison to going out and doing it on their own. So that is an example of a very cost-competitive way of helping homeowners get solar put on their homes. In addition, there are incentives to having solar put on some of the commercial buildings in the county, and Jessica Aberlin on our team running the Green Building Density Incentive Program that's been in existence since 1999 when Joan Kelsch started up the program at that point in time. That whole program embraces not only energy efficiency, but also renewable energy and so forth. And so that is yet another element where we have the opportunity to see solar put on some of the larger buildings in Arlington County. We did have a solar capacity study done back in 2011, 2012, if I remember correctly, asking the consultant, we do have this ambitious goal. Can we even achieve 160 megawatts on site here in Arlington County? And the short answer is yes. Technologically, and in terms of our 26 square miles and the buildings that we have in place here in the county, we are capable of going forth and doing that. Last but not least, Joan Kelsch on our team is pursuing the possibility of power purchase agreements and doing power purchase agreements here in the county. And if we are able to go ahead and do that, we fully anticipate embracing that path forward to get yet more solar put on county facilities, as well as seeing it done in the private sector. And last but not least, we are thoroughly embracing the virtual power purchase agreement concept that I've mentioned before, and spreading the word. And even though we led by example in doing it for Arlington County, we hope that the private sector also will look at that as a way to take advantage of that technology and that sort of transaction, and embrace their sustainability goals through virtual power purchase agreements as well. So we're working toward that end as well.
Thank you, Mr. Dooley, for walking through that. Yeah, it's always a good reminder of the benefit of solarized campaigns and the savings that they can achieve. Will staff be kind of capturing capacity, solar capacity data, generating capacity data in the county to track whether we're getting close to that 160 megawatts? I mean, I would assume that some of the installations on homes are probably around, 7 kilowatts, something like that?
If that. Some of them may be smaller than that, yes. And so, yes, each solar system on each house is a drop in the bucket toward that 160 megawatt goal, but, multiply that by all the number of homes throughout the county, it adds up over time. To answer your question, we do have metrics out there, and we are doing our best to track to the extent that we're able to go ahead and have all that information. And so we are continuing to work together with a variety of partners, including Dominion Energy, to get a good feel as to the amount of output that's happening from all the various solar PV systems throughout the county.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dooley, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Schroll. I do have one question, and I think you may have alluded to this, or maybe it was even answered when you were addressing Commissioner Peterson. We have a number of homes in Arlington that do not have off-street parking, and we have a number of older apartment buildings that have minimal or no off-street parking. I understand you're looking into the possibilities for curbside charging?
We are recognizing that there are some homeowners that have already come to the county and asked for the possibility of doing curbside charging. I would say we are investigating and working together with a variety of other departments, including our permitting and zoning departments, on what could be done and what are some of the challenges. And that was part of the reason why we reached out to the Berkeley peers to understand where they were coming from and how they tackled this. So it is not a foregone conclusion that we're going to be providing that here in the county, but we are examining the possibilities and incorporating that into the overall EV charging infrastructure plan.
Great, because certainly see what technologically is possible, but it does raise a number of other policy issues, such as potential privatization of a public street or a public spot. So yeah, I can see it would definitely need a much larger discussion about how something like that could or would work, even if it is technologically feasible. But yeah, thank you. I'm glad that you are looking ahead and thinking of these things now. Very good. Are there any other commissioners who have any questions for Mr. Dooley? Yes, Commissioner Moore.
Oh, hi, sorry. Just a quick question. Do you anticipate doing any even informational design guidelines about different alternatives for solar panels in particular, or other kinds of additions people may make on their homes?
Very good question, and let me just use this as an opportunity to market Helen Reineke-Wild's program, Green Home Choice. If you're not familiar with it, Green Home Choice is an existing program. It's been in existence for a while. There's both Green Home Choice as well as Green Home Choice Kitchen and Bath. And if you're a homeowner and you're interested in participating in that program, it would then avail you to consulting help and folks like Helen, as well as other experts, to help you as a homeowner better understand how to weave a variety of environmental issues, sustainability issues, including how to incorporate renewable energy and other technologies into your project. And that's for add-ons as well as retrofitting your existing house. Does that answer your question?
Sure. So you're mainly focusing on residential, which I think is important because sometimes people may not realize the array of options that they have, and that they could do a project that was fit in better with the community or was more aesthetically pleasing.
Yes, I would say that's the Green Home Choice program, I think, would be the primary one for single-family homeowners. When it comes to commercial properties, I think we see less of that, condo owners and so forth, because there's a little bit less that can be done in that regard. But we definitely support anyone who comes to us and has questions. We're happy to provide them the information to help them reach their goals, if you will. And so if they want to make their condo more energy efficient, or their home net zero, or whatever it might be, we do our best to be a trusted resource for that information.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. Any other further questions? Going once, going twice. Well, okay, thank you very much, Mr. Dooley. This was an excellent presentation. I'm very glad that you were able to come to us so early in this process, and I look forward to seeing the next iteration.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your time, and everybody else for their time. Have a good rest of your meeting.
Very good. Madam Clerk, can you call the third item?
Item number 4 is Z-2621-201-0. This is an adoption of an ordinance pursuant to the Arlington zoning ordinance 11.3 to designate an Arlington Historic District overlay for the Mount Salvation Baptist Church Cemetery. And on this call tonight, we have two neighborhood services staff. That will be Serena Bullinger, who will be presenting the item. And for questions, we also too have Cynthia LaChase Torres.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and welcome Ms. Bollinger and Ms. LaChase Torres. The screen is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm waiting for my presentation to upload, so I apologize for the wait. Thank you, Commissioners, for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to present for you. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. So the Historic Preservation staff would first like to thank the trustees of the Mount Salvation Church for their support, information, and most importantly, their patience throughout this process. So this request for a local historic district designation was initiated by the current trustees of the Mount Salvation Baptist Church in 2016. Since then, the Historic Preservation Program staff has collaborated with the trustees and church leadership and has received their full cooperation and support during both the research and field survey phases of the project. Note that only the cemetery will be included in the local historic district or LHD boundaries, and this is in line with the request made by the trustees. The church and the parking lots on the property will not be included within the LHD boundary or protected by the proposed zoning overlay. You can see on the left the red outlined portion would be the local historic district boundary. So Mount Salvation Baptist Cemetery is one of two church-affiliated historic African-American cemeteries in the Halls Hill Highview Park neighborhood. It has been maintained continuously by the trustees of the affiliated church, Mount Salvation Baptist, since the congregation built its first church building on the property in 1892. The cemetery contains at least 89 burials, ranging in dates from 1916 to 1974, although it is likely burials began shortly after the congregation purchased the property in the late 19th century. There are two other historic African-American cemeteries in Arlington County that are designated as local historic districts: Lomax African Methodist Episcopal AME Zion Cemetery in Green Valley and Callaway United Methodist Cemetery in Halls Hill. Mount Salvation would become the first Baptist cemetery to be locally designated and is the final resting place of many influential Arlingtonians, including Lucretia M. Lewis, Moses Pelham, Sr. and Jr., and Annie and Robert Spriggs. The currently named neighborhood of Highview Park, originally known as and still often referred to as Halls Hill, was established by newly freed enslaved people. Halls Hill, originally the upper section of the neighborhood, was derived from portions of the estates of William Marcy and Basil Hall, who sold off most of his land holdings to formerly enslaved African Americans. The lower section of the community was called both Highview Park and the bottom of the hill by the turn of the 20th century. According to church history, Reverend Cyrus Carter organized the Mount Salvation Baptist congregation, and they began meeting at the house of Moses Pelham Sr. prior to 1884. In 1884, the trustees of the church purchased a 1-acre site from Basil and Francis Hall for $80. The first church on the property was a gable-end frame building constructed circa 1892, and the second is the existing church building built in 1975 when the original church was demolished. In 1929, the original church building was surveyed by the Sanborn Fire Insurance Company and was depicted as a one-story wood frame building in the northwest corner of the parcel. The property included a brick one-story auxiliary building in the rear. Burials continued throughout this time, and by the 1930s, the church paid a member of the congregation for the maintenance of the cemetery. These two fire insurance maps show how the cemetery remained a community anchor point during a time of great change. Under the leadership of Reverend John Bernard Howard, the congregation raised money for a new church building. In May of 1974, builder E. L. Daniels applied for permits for the two-story masonry and steel-framed church designed by Bryant & Bryant Architects, based in Washington, D.C. While Bryant & Bryant Architects is a notable African-American-led firm, the church building is not a part of the proposed designation or within the local historic district boundary. The aerials show the unpaved condition of the North Culpeper Street in 1962 and the realigned and paved street in 1967. Between 1962 and 67, the county not only paved North Culpeper Street for the first time, it also added sidewalks. It should be noted that the streets in the surrounding historically white neighborhoods were already paved by 1953. The county connected North Culpeper to North Abingdon Street by 1969, increasing ease of access between the historically black neighborhood and adjacent historically white neighborhood of Waycroft Woodlawn. Mount Salvation Baptist Church maintains the cemetery primarily as a lawn with some noteworthy specimen trees and other plantings. Although there are no formal plants through the cemetery, most of the graves are grouped together, and many of these groupings are delineated by a rectangular concrete bedstead. These borders follow a linear pattern in the topographically flat portion of the cemetery and create rows for pedestrian traffic. The earliest known interment of Helen Thompson dates to 1916, and the last known interment of Lily W. Brown was in 1974. There are at least 43 burials without grave markers, but it is unknown if any predate the 1916 burial. The material of the headstones varies greatly, but most are predominantly concrete, granite, or marble. Other materials include slate, metal, ceramic tiles, and stones of unknown material. The county's urban forester identified 8 high-value trees within the proposed boundaries of the cemetery during a 2016 survey and an updated August 2019 survey. High-value trees are healthy trees that the county's urban forester recognized for their size, species, or other cultural interest. The tree assessment has been included in the designation package, and heritage trees are covered by the design guidelines developed in tandem with the trustees. The Historic Preservation staff was able to confirm a total of 89 burials, of which 46 have a grave marker and 43 do not. Staff also identified but could not confirm 2 additional burials using a questionnaire distributed to parishioners. There are only 43 grave markers recorded in the burial survey total, since 3 markers commemorate more than 1 burial. By the 1960s, most of the Mount Salvation congregants chose to be buried elsewhere, with several being buried in Pleasant Valley Memorial Park in Annandale. There are plantings near some of the grave markers. Most are intentionally maintained as decoration, but some are smaller trees, which appear to be volunteers. You can see in these recent images that there are flags and flowers that adorn the graves. This indicates that descendants are still actively visiting and maintaining many of the burial sites in the cemetery today. This slide illustrates some of the marker types found in the Mount Salvation Cemetery. The condition of the grave markers varies, but they are in generally good condition. Many of the individuals and family plots in the cemetery are bounded by a bedstead. There are more bedstead borders than are immediately apparent that have been partially buried over time due to soil erosion and accumulation. In October 2019, with permission from the trustees of the church, Historic Preservation staff conducted ground-penetrating probing of a portion of the cemetery as part of the local historic district designation nomination process, partly to identify the location of partially buried bedsteads. Probing is minimally intrusive, an archaeological technique used to determine the location of underground gravestones or burials. The detailed designation report and accompanying burial survey forms highlight several prominent families associated with the Mount Salvation Baptist Church and Cemetery, including members of the Brown, Lewis, Pelham, and Spriggs families. When compiling the family narratives and completing the burial survey forms, staff relied heavily on archival materials, including birth, marriage, and death records, censi, and newspapers. There tend to be fewer reliable records of this type for people of color, especially prior to the civil rights movement in the 1960s. Names in official records are often misspelled, and identifying information such as birth dates and names of parents are recorded inaccurately or omitted. This makes it difficult to create a complete and accurate record of an individual's life and family connections. In October 2019, staff created a 2-page questionnaire about the cemetery that church administrative officers distributed to the members of the congregation over the course of 1 month, so that staff could gather additional information pertinent to the burial sites. Parishioners related to Lucretia Elliott Lewis, Ted J. Carter, Carruthers Elliott Lewis, and William Ebert Lewis added 3 headstones to the cemetery grounds in July 2020 in the approximate burial locations of these individuals. These headstones are in accordance with the design guidelines and show that as parishioners choose to identify their descendants who they know are in the cemetery, they will be able to continue doing that and continue adding to the cemetery. Based on its cultural and historic significance, staff found that the property meets 4 of the designation criteria as outlined in the Arlington County Zoning Ordinance. B, the property has character, interest, or value as part of the development, heritage, or cultural characteristics of the county, state, or nation, association with post-Civil War era African American history and genealogy, and history of the Halls Hill Highview Park neighborhood. D, this property is associated with a person or persons who significantly contributed to the development of the county, state, or nation. Several influential Arlingtonians were buried at Mount Salvation Baptist Cemetery. The property has potential to yield important information to the prehistory or history of the county, state, or nation. Further genealogical study of the individuals interned at the cemetery and their relatives will yield information related to any possible connection to Freedman's Village and their contribution to Halls Hill. K, the property is suitable for preservation and restoration. Although the last burial occurred in 1974, the cemetery is still maintained by the trustees and descendants, and many of the grave markers are legible and in sound condition, yet some are unstable, in need of repair, or unmarked. Preservation of the Mount Salvation Baptist Cemetery by local historic district designation will guide the appropriate maintenance of the grave markers, continue to protect the site as sacred ground, and promote the importance of the cemetery to the Halls Hill Highview Park community and to Arlington County. As previously mentioned, the accompanying design guidelines are intended to assist the current and future property owners, Arlington County staff, and members of the HALRB in the preservation and protection of the historic character and physical integrity of the cemetery's local historic district. Staff included information about headstone and landscape maintenance in the design guidelines, and they were prepared in collaboration with the church trustees. The HLRB held its official public hearing to consider the designation request on September 16, 2020, and voted unanimously to send the request forward to the county board. Because the designation would create a zoning overlay, the Planning Commission is required to review the request and make a recommendation to the board. Both the HLRB and Historic Preservation staff recommend that the area within the red boundary be approved for local historic district designation. This is in response to a request from the Mount Salvation Baptist trustees to exclude the church lot and parking lots. Based on historical evidence detailed in the nomination package, the Historic Preservation Program staff finds that the site meets the necessary criteria to be designated as an LHD and recommends that the Planning Commission send this request forward to the County Board. Staff is happy to address your questions. This concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ballinger. Do we have, Madam Clerk,
Yes, we do have one speaker, Ms. Carmela Ham, who will be representing the HALRB.
Okay. You get that up on the screen.
Hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'd like to just give a brief bit of African American history regarding this cemetery at Mount Salvation Baptist Church. There was a gentleman by the name of Robert Spriggs who was born in 1836, and as a freed slave, he walked from the city of Richmond to Cherrydale, Virginia, where he subsequently met and married Annie Pelham, and between the two of them, they had 20 children. They were married in 1874. A great deal of the Pelham descendants still reside in the Halls Hill Highview Park community, where both Annie and Robert are buried in the Mount Salvation Baptist Church Cemetery. In addition to that, I'm sure you heard information regarding the Thompson family as well. These are relatives of Gloria Thompson, who was one of the first 4 children to desegregate Stratford Junior High School. In addition to the Thompson family and several others who they have relatives that still reside in the Halls Hill Highview Park community, 5 and 6 generations deep. Also, the Carpenter family have members there, buried there. And the Carpenters are well known for donating the land that became the playground for Halls Hill Highview Park to the community. And I just would like for the Planning Commission to know that the motion to provide a local historic district designation for the Mount Salvation Baptist Church Cemetery was passed unanimously by the HALRB. And at this time, we request that the Planning Commission move forward with the HALRB's recommendation and respectfully ask that you send a request to the County Board for local historic designation of this site.
Thank you, Ms. Ham. And you did actually not have a time limit because you are representing the commission.
Well, thank you. I gave you a brief synopsis of Halls Hill Highview Park African American history. I appreciate the time and thank you all very much for considering our recommendation.
You're very welcome. Are there any other commissions that want to comment on this? If not, it's now before the commission. And do we have any questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Steinberger.
Thank you. And thank you to the HLRB for that presentation. Thank you for presenting on behalf of the HLRB, and also thank you to staff for that presentation. I was wondering in terms of, and you mentioned that there had been some ground penetrating radar that had been study had been done on a portion of the site, and I was wondering if there are any plans to do additional research of that type on the site or other research, or to try to kind of identify more with some of the unmarked burial sites, if any sort of efforts were being made to kind of identify more of those sites, or what kind of other next steps there might be in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Steinberger. So we implemented ground probing, not ground penetrating radar. That would be wonderful. It is a little beyond the scope of our budget currently. It is something that we could consider applying for a grant for. There's a lot of research that is going into African American cemeteries, in part because often their boundaries are encroached upon by transportation, transit, other properties. But we didn't have a plan to move forward with that. We are going to keep working with the church to make sure that they have all the records that we have studied and researched and put together, so they can build on that, because certainly a lot of our information is going to keep coming from parishioners and descendants who work with us to identify some of those unknown burials. But right now we don't have plans for GPR. But if you know a guy who's interested in helping us out, we're very interested.
I'll go through my Rolodex and see what I can come up with. But no, I do actually appreciate that distinction. I had not picked up on that from your presentation. So thank you for clarifying.
Thank you, Commissioner Steinberger. Do we have questions, comments from any of the other commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Moore.
Thank you very much for a great presentation. And thank you also to the trustees of Mount Salvation Baptist Church. It's really nice to see you working so nicely together with the staff. This is a good example of how the LHD process and nominations and designations aren't just a regulatory tool, but a way to collect information from a community and with a community, ideally, and make that publicly available and really bring to light some of these underrepresented stories that were literally segregated into the network of the full spectrum of Arlington that we want to be communicating. Also, I just wanted to note the guidelines similarly. I was impressed that, again, they don't need to be just a regulatory tool, but a really valuable information source. And I liked, for example, the way that the headstone materials were both described and differentiated, and hopefully will remain a really valuable source for the church. So anyway, just want to commend you on your work, and also thanks to the trustees of the church for their enthusiasm and cooperation.
Thank you, Commissioner Morton, and I would very much like to associate myself with those comments and add that I too am very impressed with the totality of the report. Clearly, the trustees of the church and the surrounding community worked very closely with the historical preservation staff to come with a pretty comprehensive report, which is going to be very, very valuable going forward, documenting this is very much a history of not just this church, but really of this community. And it deserves the attention it's gotten, and it's going to be an excellent addition to the historical record of this county. Are there any other comments, questions by the commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Bagley.
Yeah, first of all, I really appreciate the history lesson tonight. I did not grow up in this area, so I have passed by that area and have often wondered. So I'm really grateful that, and I love preservation, so I'm grateful that everyone has taken the time and attention on this. I'm just curious, as part of the process to designate this, is there, and perhaps I just missed it, but is there a way that, it was fascinating to me to hear the history tonight. I would love for others who may not be in the neighborhood or part of that church that would be able to see it or pass by a plaque and maybe hit a QR code or have something where this information, which was really beautiful tonight, can be shared. So I was just curious about that. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. We are planning to put all the information up on the website, and also distribute it to all of our readers. We have a historic preservation newsletter, so it's going to be submitted in that and then added to our list of local historic districts. I must admit, I'm not sure if we have a plan to install a marker. Cynthia, is it on our marker list? We have a long list of markers that we're working on, but it's entirely feasible that we are working on a marker. Cynthia?
Sure. Thanks, Serena. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. We currently do not have this on our list for potential historic markers. Of our 40 districts, close to all of them have some type of signage, but not quite all of them. But if this is something that the trustees would like to work with us on as a future project, we would be more than happy to do so. And as Serena said, we do plan to have all of the detailed information related to this designation project on the county website. For those of you who are not as familiar with the other 40 local districts that we currently have designated, you can find that on the Historic Preservation website. And we have lists of all of our districts that also include photographs as well as designation reports and design guidelines where we have them. So that is one repository that we have online where anyone would be able to learn about this site and all of our others.
Thank you very much. I did note in the report that the trustees of the church are a bit reluctant to have members of the public just going through the cemetery at will. And indeed, you give them the provision for putting a fence around around it, which makes perfect sense. I would think that holding off on a sign until that fence is built might work best. But of course, it's up to the trustees of the church for their comfort level with this. Do we have any other comments, questions? If not, I think it's time to move on to motions. Commissioner Steinberger, do you have a motion for this?
Indeed, I do. Reading from my other screen, excuse me. The Planning Commission recommends that the County Board adopt the attached ordinance, reference attachment A, designating Mount Salvation Baptist Cemetery, located at 1961 North Culpeper Street, portion of RPC 07-006-129, as a local historic district. Should I read the second part at the same time? Or are they two separate?
They're two separate things.
Separate. Yeah, okay, so stop me with the first. That's the first motion.
And I'll second that. Oh, give it to Commissioner Bagley, I think, seconded it.
Okay, very good. Do we have any discussion? Okay, I guess we can move on to the to vote. Commissioner Weir?
Oh, Commissioner Guerin has your hand raised.
Oh,
No.
didn't see that. Hold on. I don't see any hand raised right now. Oh,
It went away. Sorry. Never mind.
I did have my hand raised. I just wanted to say that I would be delighted to support this. This is the sort of thing that makes us very happy to get behind the community working with staff, this sort of historic preservation and placemaking, a strong report. So I just wanted to make that statement. Thank you.
Very good. So before we vote, any other discussion or comments?
I'll second what Commissioner Guerin said. I was really happy to have this report too, and it made me miss all of my former HALRB colleagues. That's all.
Yeah, like I said, yes, it was a very, very thorough report. It's wonderful. Anyway, okay, are we ready for vote? Commissioner Weir?
Aye.
Commissioner Stiegel?
Aye.
Commissioner Schroll?
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes?
Aye.
Commissioner Guerin?
Aye.
Commissioner Morton?
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger?
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Sarley?
Aye.
Commissioner, and I will vote aye as well. And okay, it's a unanimous vote. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, there's one more motion.
I have a second motion.
Oh, let's move ahead to the second motion. Yes.
Okay, the second motion, the Planning Commission recommends the County Board adopt the attached Mount Salvation Cemetery Historic District Designation Guidelines, referenced as Attachment D.
Okay, do we have a second for that?
Second.
And that was Commissioner Bagley?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any discussion, any comments? Okay, let's move on to the vote then. Commissioner Weir?
Aye.
Commissioner Siegel?
Aye.
Commissioner Stroll?
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes?
Aye.
Commissioner Guerin?
Aye.
Commissioner Morton?
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger?
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Sarley?
Aye.
And I will vote aye as well. Very good. Both motions pass unanimously. Thank you very much to staff for bringing this before us, and to the trustees of the church for, again, bringing this before us. Yes, Ms. Torres, you have a comment? Your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to thank everyone for considering this designation tonight. It's been a while since we've come to the Planning Commission with a designation, so we are glad to be here. And I also wanted to just go on the record to thank the HLRB for their support. Thank you, Ms. Ham, for joining us tonight. But most importantly, I wanted to take this opportunity to thank the trustees of the Mount Salvation Baptist Church, who really have been so patient. They have been beyond patient and waiting and working with us to complete this project. So I just wanted to thank them. And we look forward to working with them in the future as stewards of this property. So thank you.
You're welcome. We very much love having the historic preservation staff come before us. Whatever they bring before us has always been an education to all of us on the history of the county. And it never fails to bring something forward that surprises or something we had not known before. So the more you bring before us, the happier we are. So,
wonderful. We'll see you again for sure. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. It's now time for approval of the minutes of our January 11th and 13th meeting. Madam Clerk, do you have, we have them ready to go? Is that correct? And do I have the January 11th meeting? meeting minutes? Well, then I will move that the Planning Commission approve the minutes of our January 11th, 2021 meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Was that Commissioner Hughes?
Sarli.
Sarli, okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Troll.
It looks like in the January 11th meeting minutes, I think Commissioner Bagley's name is spelled incorrectly.
Yes, we've made those corrections,
Okay.
Commissioner Troll. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Okay, any other comments or issues people have with that report? The minutes. Okay, I think we're ready for a vote on the January 11th minutes. Commissioner Weir?
Aye.
Commissioner Kroll?
Aye.
Commissioner Siegel?
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes?
Aye.
Commissioner Gearin?
Aye.
Commissioner Morton?
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger?
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Sarli?
Aye.
And I will vote as well. For the
Mr.
January,
Chair,
yes,
I move the Planning Commission approve its meeting minutes for January 13th, 2021.
thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Do we have a second?
Second.
And that was
Commissioner Schroll.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any discussion, any comments, corrections, edits? Hearing none, let's move on to vote. Commissioner Weir?
Aye.
Commissioner Siegel?
Aye.
Commissioner Schroll?
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes?
Aye.
Commissioner Gearin?
Aye.
Commissioner Morton?
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger?
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Sarli?
Aye.
And I will vote aye as well. Great. The minutes of both meetings have been approved. Now let's move on. Do we have a staff report on current matters? Any of the staff that have anything they'd like to raise? Yes, Mr. Pfeiffer.
We do not have a report this month. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll move on to our committees. SBRC, Commissioner Morton.
Thank you very much. Our projects are continue to move along. I'll give you just a quick update on the status of the projects that are moving through the process. The Vernon Street duplex, chaired by Commissioner Patel, just ended the online engagement session, I think a couple of days ago. Land Base C, chaired by Commissioner Hughes, co-chaired by Commissioner Sarli, has had its first virtual SPRC, and I believe there'll be another one in March. The RCA project, chaired by Commissioner Steinberger. The online engagement has finished. The virtual SPRC will happen tomorrow. Crystal Plaza 1, chaired by Commissioner Weir. The online engagement session has finished, and there will be a virtual SPRC a week from tomorrow on February 18th. The big news, as you've heard, coming up, and if you like, I think Mr. Pfeiffer can elaborate, is Penn Place. That will be chaired by Commissioner Peterson, supported by Commissioner Gearin as co-chair. And Mr. Pfeiffer, I don't know if you want me to give a preview of how the process is going to work at this point, or would you like to do it?
Sure, I could just give a very brief summary. The intended process for Penn Place, while we are still working out the details, we're pretty early on in the process, as Commissioner Morton just mentioned. We just got the application in, but we're looking at a review process that is broadly similar to what we did for Met Park. So that would include a community kickoff meeting, an LRPC process, and then an SPRC process. The one major difference between this application and the Met Park application is that we are looking to have a parallel park master planning process prior to the approval of the site plan package. So that is unlike Met Park, where we went through the park master planning process post-approval. So this will occur in tandem, we are thinking, with SPRC. So more to come on that, and we're excited to kick off that process.
Thank you, Mr. Pfeiffer. Anything further, Commissioner Morton? For SPRC?
No, that's it.
Thank you. For LRPC, Commissioner Weir, given that Commissioner Patel is not here yet, is there anything you would like to jump in on with that?
I think that you mean zoning, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, zoning. I just spaced out on that. Commissioner Schroll, you can just wait a moment. Let Commissioner Weir finish up, then we'll get to LRPC.
I don't have anything. There's a meeting on the books for the 17th, but I do not recall what the topic is. I'm just going to see what I have from Mr. Rogers to see if I have anything that I'm blanking on. He had said, as of a couple weeks ago, that there would likely be a cancellation, as he wasn't aware of any studies in place that are ready to brief ZOCO. So I expect that we'll learn in the next few days that the meeting for a week from today is canceled.
Thank you, Commissioner Weir. And Commissioner Schroll, my apologies, and you're up now for LRPC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm going to be asking Commissioner Gearin for some help with this update as well. So on the Pershing Drive Special GLUP study, we had a meeting recently. Staff is now working on the draft report for the Special GLUP study for Pershing Drive. The next anticipated meeting date is sometime this spring, so likely either late March, kind of early April timeframe to look at the report. Then it would go to commissions and then county board. I want to see if we've had some kind of discussions with staff recently. I want to see if Commissioner Sarli, who's assisting me on this, has anything to add before I continue.
No, I don't. I think that about covers it. We've just been working with them and sort of progressing along.
All right. So yeah, more to come on that. On the Clarendon sector plan update, there is a kind of open community engagement process on the county website currently. Staff has new presentations. There's also an online feedback form. Comments for that are due February 22nd. We will have a live virtual engagement in March for that. And then I'd like to pass it off to Commissioner Gearin for an update on the Courthouse West Special GLUP process. Commissioner Gearin?
Yeah, thank you. So this is the meeting, the LRPC meeting that's next Tuesday, the 16th. And as you know, we try to balance community needs with the adopted plans and policies for the community. So at this meeting, we'll be considering an application to consider a proposed GLUP designation change, potentially a special GLUP effort. And we do those when there's little to no guidance in the existing plans or policies. It's an opportunity to step back and look at the big picture for the community, including the commissions, to weigh in before we look at an actual project in an SPRC. So we did see this application before in November 2019. We had an LRPC meeting for this site, and there was little turnout from LRPC or the community. But at that time, staff noted that because they were proposing such a significant increase in density and height, that it was appropriate for a special GLUP study. Since then, staff has had so many projects and their resources have been so limited, they haven't had a chance to conduct a special GLUP for this site. So the applicant's coming back in asking maybe there's another way to do this and go faster. So that's the sort of thing we need to consider when we revisit this on Tuesday. There's still significant concerns with the proposed height and density. Perhaps they could propose a lower height and density and come in with a process that might be a little more, a little shorter for us to go through. I would really appreciate any of you who are free to participate in this. This is the Courthouse West site. It's the surface parking lot just east of the Whole Foods in Clarendon. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anything further, Commissioner Schroll?
No, that concludes the LRPC report. Thank you.
Let's move on to PFRC.
Yes, thank you. Since it looks like we may not have a ZOCO meeting next week on the 17th, you all can instead attend my PFRC meeting, where we will be discussing the art bus facility and the planning for that. Had a planning session with county staff yesterday. We're in good shape for that meeting. I believe this will be our second meeting on that topic. And I believe we'll have at least one, maybe two additional meetings thereafter. But I will be coordinating with Commissioner Peterson because it looks like I may have a little bit of a conflict for the second hour of the PFRC meeting. And she may very nicely, if I buy her chocolate or something, serve as chair for the second hour. But we will coordinate that to make sure she is up to speed for such a task. And sorry to put you on the spot, Commissioner Peterson, but thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Steinberger, and thank you in advance, Commissioner Peterson, if you're able to do that. Commissioner Hughes, do we have anything from the Form-Based Code Advisory Committee?
Is it working? Ah, frozen.
You're going in and out.
Can you see me, Jim? Commissioner Tim?
We can hear you.
Perfect. We'll go with that. Yeah. We'll go with minimal to report at this time. We will have in the future, in the coming months, commissioners, a use permit review, I believe, coming up for the second half of the giant Columbia Pike Park project coming forward. For all those concerned with the historic building at the corner of Walter Reed and Columbia Pike, it is not included. So should make it a much more enjoyable conversation for all. That's it, Commissioner Lantomi.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. And I'm going to again put Commissioner Siegel on the spot. Do you want to give us a quick update on the Pentagon City PDSP process?
I knew you were going to do that. Give me 1 second. I'll show my face, my very tired face. Okay. Yeah. So we had a sort of a pre-meeting today with the consultant and Matt Matusak, and we are really launching squarely into the substance of the planning process. As you know, the major output of this process will be consideration of design scenarios. The area is large. It's the whole PDSP, and it can be redesigned a number of ways. There are a lot of options. What I think is particularly fortuitous or felicitous is that we will begin with the public realm, open space, parks, streets, alleys, trails. Trails and alleys are at a level of detail below where we will begin. But the consultants have produced 5 sort of frameworks to get community input on which of these frameworks would be best. In terms of the public realm, which, as you know, surrounds the private buildings that will go up. The public realm is the organizing principles, and they see this, they're proposing that we think about it in 5 different ways. Is Virginia Highlands Park the heart of the place? Do we want to see green ribbons? That's just a teaser. You will be able to engage on this and give feedback, and I invite you all to do that on Monday. It's President's Day, the 15th. I believe it starts at 6:30. You'll find the link online. It's really the beginning of the substance of the planning work, and it should be a lot of fun and very interesting.
Thank you, Commissioner Siegel. And I think that wraps it up. You did see that was circulated was our Planning Commission report for 2020. That was circulated by Ms. Johnson. And there's nothing else. I think our meeting is at an end for this month.
Commissioner Lynn, tell me.
Yes, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Johnson, that'll be fine. Also with those attachments was the updated and revised 2021 liaison assignment document.
Yes, that's correct.
So all information has been updated and revised with current staff and contact information.
Very good. Well, I want to thank Ms. Johnson for her work in getting this going, Mr. Wood for the technical services to get this to happen and happen smoothly. Thank you very much. Mr. Pfeiffer, thank you also for your work as coordinator liaison. And commissioners, thank you for your good preparation and having, this has been a very good meeting tonight. Our next meeting will be March, and we have a number of SBRCs, LRPCs, and PFRCs coming up in the next few weeks before the next meeting, and I look forward to seeing you at some, if not all of those. Given that, I think that this meeting will be adjourned for this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, see you all next month.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good job. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.